Hi, everybody, and welcome here today. We want to share a little bit about how we are thinking about Backstage as the internal developer portal for the future. My name is Stefan, so let me start by introducing myself. I've been working at Spotify for close to 8 years, actually. Quite a long time in our industry, but that's how it is. But before me, even though I worked for such a long time, Backstage was available. And it wasn't a shiny then, it wasn't as rich, and it was actually called System C, which speaks a little bit to what we were using it for. To share a little bit of my story, I started in the perimeter team. We're responsible together with my teammates to handle all the traffic through the perimeter. And if music wasn't streaming throughout the night, that was a big deal. Of course, you got paged, you woke up, you needed to solve the problem. Things are not always as easy as that you can solve them yourself. And then, of course, you need to bring in somebody else from another team. And that's why the phone book was so important. You were able to look up what's the other team, who's on call. I page you so you can come and join me. Happy culture. We were helping each other solve problems. And that's, of course, then why the complete catalog of our software is so important. But it was important for more than that reason. We also wanted to collaborate and build on each other. And finding out who owns something to discuss with them with the API is super important. The next thing that we recognize, though, that in order to build and help each other, and build on each other's stuff, it's pretty good if we build on the same technology. So we introduced self-service. We had a scaffold that everybody used, and we created that. And we were able to be up and running with a new service within 5 minutes. Really helpful when you're growing a company, right? But this is not the only thing that is helpful. You start by creating stuff, but then you maintain it. You spend more time on maintenance than building new stuff in reality. And that's also when it became important to evolve the technology guidelines we had. So we introduced scorecarding. We introduced something we call golden technologies, how we build technology at Spotify. And this was really successful. We managed to maintain and move the complete fleet. And we were also building on these companies that more and more things were actually really beneficial to find in Backstage. So we added more tooling to it, and we saw it grow. Today, we have more than 100 plugins inside our own Backstage instance, and that just keeps growing. And we wanted actually to share the success of what we were doing, or actually we wanted to share Backstage and build it together with the community. And we think that the ability to extend it and tailor it to an organization's need was one of the key things that made this successful. Actually, today, we will be joined by Abi from DX. And he did this market survey with 180 companies and researched like, okay, which IDP are you using? Your homegrown, other solution, a SaaS solution, etc. And it turned out that 60% of the companies are using Backstage, which is super great, of course. And if we only zoom in on how many of those are part of the commercial solutions that exist there, already the market share is up at 89%. A question we wonder, why is that? How is it so? And I think part of this is the story I just told, that we are building something that solves us, help us solve our problems, same as it solves for other companies with the same challenges, many teams, microservices architecture. And also because of the extensibility, because even if we have some shared problems, others are not. And then you can tailor it to your needs. And that is why we're moving forward. And today we're speaking about Spotify Portal for Backstage, a cloud solution, hosted solution, basically Backstage in a box. With us today, we have Pia and Abi, who will speak about how to understand your engineering organization. Because Backstage is only useful if you understand what problems you solve. And then that starts with understanding the developers. Then, of course, this is a webinar, we need a demo. So Joe, Tom, and Megan are here to demo how Portal looks today and how we are using it. And we'll end with hearing from a customer. They will be joining us from PagerDuty, who will be speaking to Tag with their customer journey. And with that, Pia and Abi, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Hi, everyone. I am Pia, and I'm the GM for Backstage and Portal. And with me today, I have Abi. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, Abi.
Thanks, Pia and Spotify team. Excited to be here. I'm Abi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DX, which is a platform that helps companies measure and improve developer productivity and experience.
Super cool. So we're so delighted to have you here, Abby, and warm welcome. We're going to chat about, of course, measuring productivity a little bit here. And here are some metrics that are the reasons for why we believe Spotify Portal has such power for us and for other companies. So Portal is what makes it sort of possible for everyone else to achieve what Spotify has achieved with Backstage. Because Portal combines the Spotify experience and expertise with the flexibility and extensibility of Backstage. Now, Abby, as we're seeing more and more companies starting on their IDP journeys, how do you at DX think about measuring developer productivity? Like what should companies think about when they are measuring the impact of their IDP?
Yeah, I think for companies just starting out on their IDP journey, there's a lot of challenges at the beginning of that journey. I know you guys at Spotify often emphasize the importance of really identifying what the main problems are that you want to solve. Data on developer productivity can tell you a lot about where your biggest opportunities are. It can also help you with making the business case for an investment in an IDP. I think sometimes we see organizations struggle with that a little bit. What's the best way to get concrete data to show the need for an IDP? And as you invest in your IDP and remeasure productivity over time, the data can show you exactly how you're actually moving the needle, which helps you, build the momentum, get even more investment in your IDP, and ultimately build a great developer experience. And I think two things that are really important for organizations to keep in mind when it comes to how to get data and how to measure productivity. The first is the importance of combining both qualitative and quantitative data. Quantitative metrics, things like cycle time or lead time, these give us really good data points to understand, the state of things in terms of how software delivery is operating. But we also need qualitative data, self-reported metrics, and feedback from developers that really tells you what exactly the biggest pain points are that you should be solving. And then lastly, industry benchmarking is something that DX offers. And this is really important because everyone loves a good competition. It's one thing to be able to present on here's what our metrics look like today. It's another thing to be able to say, here's where our organization stands today compared to the industry, and here's where we need to get, and an IDP can help us get there.
Yeah, I love how you framed it as a sort of iterative approach as well. Sort of you do something, you measure it, and you do the next thing because you based on these learnings. So because an IDP is only as useful as its reach. So that's why we believe that internal adoption is so critical, and which is why, of course, extensibility is a core feature of Portal. However, when we have a platform that is this flexible, it can sometimes be very difficult for folks to understand where to start. How would you go about guiding people on how to get started on their IDP journey?
What we find is that, again, benchmarking is often really illuminating, right? So a lot of our customers, when they benchmark their developer experience, it's pretty common for them to find things like documentation or ability to access tools, or just the overall sprawl of tools and information contributing to a number of different areas in terms of opportunities. So one thing we've seen commonly happen is actually benchmarking around knowledge management and documentation surface as a top pain point for customers. And many of those customers we've seen use that data to go then invest in a Backstage IDP. The extensibility of Backstage is also, of course, really unique and powerful. One of the things we've seen organizations do is that discoverability of tooling across the organization or custom internal tooling is often difficult as an organization grows. And so being able to consolidate your internal tooling into one unified experience, being able to offer new tooling within a first-class developer user experience inside of a Backstage IDP, those things we've seen be really powerful for starting to move the needle. And ultimately, getting that developer feedback through qualitative methods and surveys, that's going to give you that constant feedback on whether you're headed in the right direction or not. Just like what we do with, our consumer products, right? Like Spotify and our product, we get feedback from our users, and that tells us a lot on whether we're solving the right problems and whether we're moving the needle.
Yeah, and I think DX has done a lot for the industry to really highlight how important it is to follow up, just like the B2C companies follow up, obviously since decades back, and feedback from their users. So should developer experience companies do. So I think you've done a whole lot for our whole industry here, and I think DX is the market leader in developer productivity metrics, and I think it would be really cool for all of us to hear, how did DX come about, and how have you managed to stay differentiated in this market?
Yeah, so DX is a 4-year-old company, but the journey goes far back beyond 4 years. DX's origins are really in our research. So we began, actually, the very first thing we shipped as a company was a scholarly paper on developer experience. And as some folks know, the creators of Dora and Space, the researchers behind all the leading frameworks, are part of our team. And what we've really done is turn this research on what is developer experience, what is developer productivity, and how do you measure it? We've turned that research into a practical tool that can be deployed at your company. And so, today we're really proud to serve over 300 of some of the world's leading companies, from Netflix, Uber, Block, to Vanguard, Pfizer, Procter & Gamble. And what really differentiates us, firstly, is our research-based approach, being grounded in real research. But also, we're really the only solution that combines both qualitative and quantitative aspects of developer productivity in one solution. And as I mentioned earlier, this is so important because metrics alone doesn't give us the full picture on what's really holding developers back. And then over the years, we've been able to build up a benchmark data set of over 10 million data points now. And so the power of bringing companies together onto the same platform to be able to compare against each other is something that's unique to the DX platform.
Yeah, I think actionability on metrics is like a holy grail, as it is so difficult to really realize what should we do out of all of these data points. And I think you really stand out there, DX, as a platform. So could you speak a little bit to sort of the learning so far on what actions, what metrics are the most beneficial for companies from your point of view in driving actions? One data point that I have personally experienced is like the Dora metrics are great, but they haven't. I struggled over the years to sort of realize, what should I do now?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways we talk about this problem to customers is that it's good to think of metrics in terms of sort of two buckets, right? You have what we like to call diagnostic metrics, and then what we call improvement metrics. Diagnostic metrics are akin to like when you go to the doctor to get a checkup every year, right? They're going to give you this high level baseline of, what's going well, what's not going well, but you're not necessarily going to check your cholesterol like every day or every week and action upon that metric. And it's the same thing for developer metrics, right? Dora was actually created as a benchmarking tool. And so Dora is very much a diagnostic tool. It's a high level check on how are your software delivery performance processes. Similarly at DX, we've released a framework called the DX Core 4 that combines Dora, Space, and DevX into our own diagnostic overall holistic view into how is your developer productivity. But none of these metrics, whether it's DORA or DX Core 4, are necessarily designed for daily or weekly or even monthly use at the team level. What we find is really actionable at the team level are things that are, metrics that are closer to the code. So things like, how many stale or outstanding PRs do we have? What's our cycle time? How many defects or issues did we have last week? Even things like what Spotify offers in terms of scorecarding, which is very focused on, telling teams, where to focus in terms of their system quality and health. So you always want to be looking at metrics just like you would an IDP or any other product. What is the problem you're really trying to solve for the team? What are the teams telling you that they actually need and want? And when you follow that and also follow it with the proper enablement. One thing we do at DX is not just provide metrics, but also provide the what to do about the metrics, so recommendations and best practices. When you combine all that together, I think you're able to create a culture where the data is used not only positively, but is highly actionable for teams, managers, and developers.
Yeah, very, very powerful and needed. So the final question I really wanted us to hit on is AI, of course. So with the massive AI macro wind, which is on top of all of our minds, I think, in the industry and in the entire world, the developer user journeys are quickly evolving. So then I think it's an interesting question to think about, like, will that influence how we measure things? Like, are there new ways to measure productivity and developer experience in an AI-driven infrastructure? What do you think about that?
Yeah. At DX, this is a big focus area for us where most of our customers are heavily focused on AI right now and trying to help them, understand how that's affecting their organization, helping them understand, what's the right path to making the shift is a big part of the type of data that we're focused on surfacing. I think, one anecdote I want to share that always comes up when I recall talking to Dr. Nicole Forsgren about this almost a year ago. And I remember when I asked the same question to her, she jokingly said, well, finally lines of code is going to be finally killed as a metric that we use because, AI can generate code in a split second. And I think, that's one of the things that is changing, I think, is, certain metrics like lines of code lose significance in a world where, AI can generate hundreds of lines of code in a second. But to really get to the root of it, some of the things that we see not changing, right? Measuring data from both people and systems remains just as important as before. Really, the only way to know are AI tools actually helping developers, build software faster and build higher quality software is to ask your developers and collect data and metrics from the developer experience. Another thing that's not changing is the importance of measuring across different dimensions that we hold in tension, as the SPACE framework recommends. So in Core 4 framework, we have speed and quality as oppositional dimensions. And that's really important with AI because AI can clearly speed up the speed at which we create software. But I think a really important question is, what are the longer term effects on code maintainability or software reliability? We're seeing hints at some of the challenges that are coming because of the use of AI. And it's really important that organizations get ahead of that and start tracking that data themselves. In terms of what really has changed, I think how do you measure the success of AI tool investments is a unique challenge. It's unique also because of the rate at which these tools are evolving and changing. Again, at DX, we feel a lot of the metrics that we have been using do still hold validity in a post-AI world, but there's a lot of unique problems that arise from trying to get data on AI tool usage. And lastly, I think what's happening now is that with agentic tools like Codex or GitHub Copilot Agent, we need to really start including agents into the conversation of how we think about, a team and how our organization actually creates software. And we're just scratching the surface there, so I don't have the answer, but that's certainly something that's going to change the way we think about organizational effectiveness and productivity.
It's going to be super cool. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much, Abby, for taking the time. Great conversation. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's see firsthand how Spotify Portal can make developers more productive. Today, we have one of our engineers to show you around the latest version of Portal. Take it away, Joe.
Thanks, Pia. Hey, everyone. My name's Joe Camopiano. I'm the sales engineer for the Backstage team here at Spotify. I'm going to walk you through some of the fundamental pieces of the Portal environment. So let me share my screen quick. Cool. So when it comes to Portal is extremely easy to get set up for the very first time. We have an onboarding wizard that'll help you get set up with a production running Backstage instance in a matter of minutes, compared to weeks or maybe months that it might take in an organization. We have out-of-the-box catalog integrations that make it really easy to set up and create that for the first time. Like Abby was saying, though, Backstage or Portal, it is a crawl, walk, run approach to getting the most value out of it. So what I'm going to show you really quickly is just some of the fundamental features of Backstage that help you get set up for it for the first time. First thing I'm going to show off is going to be our catalog. So the catalog is the fundamental piece of an IDP. It identifies things like service ownership, metadata around your different projects, but it gives you an entire landscape view of all the different software running in your organization, from APIs to components, which could be your services and websites, to the cloud resources that they rely on, and higher taxonomies to understand the systems that are going as well, too. Looking at one of these different components, I'll look at something like this artist lookup service. Here I could see some information about what team owns this project, the system it's a part of, what technologies it utilizes, links to quickly go view the source code or the documentation for it, helpful links to identify other tools that I might want to use, and over here on the right I can see an entire graphical representation of what are all the different components of this different project, what it relies on, what service it's a part of, what cloud resources, to give you an entire visualization of how this project actually runs. If you see up here on the top, you'll see a bunch of different tabs related to other tools or plugins that I'm able to run. Backstage is an incredibly extensible ecosystem, which we've talked about previously. There's over 3,000 companies that are using Backstage today. They've created hundreds of plugins. So I'd be hard to guess that you wouldn't be able to model at least most of your infrastructural tools into plugins into the view that I see up here. So if I look at some of these different plugins that are running, I can see things like the different APIs that are provisioned from this artist lookup service, the documentation that's running for it too. So we know how to contribute to this project, how to find information about it. This is all set up through Make Docs and does docs like code. So your engineers can keep building their code and their documentation together at the same time. This will come in handy later when we do a deeper demo into this too. I have Soundcheck up and running, which is our scorecarding solution, another one that I'll show in more details later. ADRs, which show the decisions for how we built this project. The CI/CD flows that show information around what are the GitHub action workflows that are going, and information and deployments around our Kubernetes cluster. These are just some examples of what you can do with the catalog that I've shown up today. There's so many more different plugins you can install to really make it your own. In fact, inside of this view, we have the ability to edit the layout, add additional metadata directly from this UI as well too. So you can really configure this to your own organization's needs. Once you've gone through and you've set up the catalog, you've added your documentation in, one of the next core features of Backstage or Portal specifically is going to be the scaffolder. The scaffolder is how you go about provisioning projects with your best practices built into them. This makes it so that you can build skeleton projects with all of those best practices and standards built into it, and have your engineers use this vending machine for their to create their new projects as you see fit. This helps you standardize the approach that you're doing for your projects, while also giving you a decreased burden on the maintenance aspect of the different projects, because you'll know how they look under the hood. The scaffolder has a bunch of different installed actions that help you get the most out of it to start your project. You can also build your own scaffolder actions to really meet the needs of your organization as well too. This makes it really powerful for you to kind of set these up, use what you've already built out of the box, and just keep moving forward with your IDP. Last feature I'm going to show you today right now is going to be how Portal really differentiates itself from an open source Backstage instance. That comes through this config manager that I'm showing you here. The config manager you can think of as the abstraction of all the complexity of building and configuring your Backstage environment. Here you can see I have information around the app itself, which will be all the information of the different accounts I want to connect to my Backstage or Portal instance, all the different details of this account as well too. It also has information around the different plugins that I'm running. So this you could think of as an abstraction of an app config or package JSON that you would include in your open source Backstage if you're familiar with those. Here you can see all the different plugins I have up and running. I'm able to quickly configure these to my own needs as well to see things like what are the different catalog modules I have up and running, all the providers that are going under the hood as well too. So the power in Portal comes from extensibility. So Portal, I'm able to add open source plugins that are already out there in the community directly to this environment, configure them to my needs through this config manager UI, and just start them in the environment and they'll be available for you to start utilizing. Portal also will automatically upgrade to the latest version of Backstage on your behalf. It'll also identify when there's new plugins that have updates available for you to install as well too. So that maintenance burden is really reduced by utilizing Portal. We've heard from so many different companies that they want to spend their time bringing value from Backstage, not maintaining Backstage. These are just some of the fundamental features of Portal. There's so many more, such as the different plugins that we've installed through the bundle that we had previously released into the open source Backstage community. I'm going to hand it over to Tom now to describe a real world use case that we might want to run through Portal with some of the advanced features.
Thank you, Joe. So as Joe walked us through the foundations, which are now so easy to set up with Portal, we believe the future of the IDP is the ecosystem of tools which builds on this foundation, empowering engineering organizations to work faster, more efficient, and with a greater control. In the next few minutes, we will show you this in action by demoing a real-life scenario. The demo will feature 4 of our Portal's plugins: Soundcheck, our scorecard solution for tech health and standards; AiKA, our AI knowledge assistance; Confidence, our experimentation platform, which will allow us to add feature flags and gradual rollouts; and our data experience plugin, which lets you manage datasets inside Portal just like you manage software components. You'll see how the tight integration between these plugins, as well as with other parts of Portal, creates a seamless experience for the user and easier to ship software faster. Oh, and just a note, instead of doing a pre-recorded video of these features, we wanted to do this as a live demo so you get a real sense of what it's like to move around with the Portal environment. But first, let me illustrate a scenario. Imagine we developed a new service at Spotify. It's a next-gen AI recommendation service. It's a game changer for our Spotify customers, the music listeners, etc. But to fully unlock its potential, we need to migrate all our features and services who are consuming the legacy service to the new service. This kind of migration is complex and requires coordination and efforts across many teams and services. So, how does the IDP of the future help engineers tackle this with efficiency and speed? Let's take a look. Back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Tom. Let me share out my screen again, and we're going to walk through this actual scenario. Cool. So the first thing that we would want to do when we want to migrate to this new AI recommendation engine is figure out how do we know which different projects are currently on the older version that we need to do this upgrade. So for platform engineering teams, the way that we could do this is through our plugin called Soundcheck. Soundcheck is a scorecarding solution that we invented internally at Spotify in 2018. We included it in our bundle in 2022, and now it is one of the core features of Portal as well. Soundcheck is a way that once you've gone through and you've cataloged all of your different entities, it gives you a lens into observe and monitor how each one of your different projects and teams are performing against the standards that you have. It also has a gamification approach for your different engineering teams to want to meet the standards that you've rolled out. Some of the core features that we have built into Soundcheck are going to be the checks, which are all the different individual conditions that will be added into the scorecards themselves. Tracks, which are the individual scorecards that we've rolled out. We call them tracks because everything is music themed at Spotify. And then integrations. Integrations are how you actually bring data into the Soundcheck ecosystem that you're able to base your different checks on. You can see we have a lot of out-of-the-box built-in integrations that you can connect to your own services to. Looking at one, we can look at something like GitHub and see all the different APIs that we can pull back from GitHub that we can do some basis of our different checks from. We also have a generic HTTP request collector that allows you to build this to your own third-party integrations that maybe we just don't currently support. And we also have an SDK that allows you to build your own custom collectors to whatever sources you want on top of this as well too. One of the features that we've rolled out into Soundcheck is going to be campaigns. Campaigns are going to be the different short-term objectives that you want to reach with the different objectives of the Soundcheck data that we have under the hood. Before I go into the campaigns themselves, I'll come back to this in a second. I'm going to talk through how would we actually go about doing this integration. The first thing we would do is actually go through and set up the source code management integration. Looking here, I can see I have a couple of different options for how I can go about modeling my data. The first is looking for if files exist. The second is doing regex matching on actual files in your source code. And the third is going to be JSON YAML matching. So in order to do this AI recommendation, what I'm going to do is actually look at all the different projects for their packaged JSON and to see, are they actually using this new Spotify AI recommendation engine or not? So I will set this up inside of the condition. And then what I'll also do then is go through and configure this campaign. The campaign will track the objective that I want to meet. The time I want it to run is a month. I've added the condition to this campaign. I've said what entities I want it to run on. The recommendation engine will be used across all of our websites. So that's going to be the different cataloged entities I want to check on. And finally, the milestones I want to reach, which is going to be 100% for this objective. So now that I've rolled out this campaign, I can sit back and watch as the different projects will go through and update and meet the needs of our organization. We have notifications built in so that you can send this data to whatever sources you want through the new event system within Backstage as well too. Now that I've gone through and set up this campaign, imagine I'm one of the engineering teams that needs to go and migrate to this new service. Looking at a project like this, a music player, you can see the campaign is added to it and I'm currently failing this campaign. It can be overwhelming to go through and try to figure out how I actually need to do this migration. So what I'm going to do instead is utilize our plugin called AiKA. AiKA is our AI knowledge assistant that we've added directly into Portal. It works with LLMs that you can connect under the hood to your own enterprise accounts. So it'll work with things like OpenAI, Gemini, and Amazon Bedrock. What it'll do is it'll do a RAG search directly on top of the tech docs that you've cataloged inside of your Backstage or Portal environment. It can also index things like Confluence, which are available that we can do search across, but also get the knowledge out of inside of AiKA as well too. So for this real world scenario, I'm going to go through and I'm going to ask AiKA, how do I migrate to the new AI recommendation engine? AiKA will look through all of our documentation. It'll try to find out what information it can give me about this new AI recommendation engine and how I go about actually doing this migration. Here it is spitting out all the information it can. We plan on rolling out an MCP server for AiKA as well too. So in the future, you could think of this as actually running directly inside of your IDE, and maybe it can even do this upgrade for you. But for now, what I'm going to do is look at the different steps that it tells me to do and actually make this migration happen. So the first step I see is actually I need to update a dependency from this old music player recommendation engine to this new AI recommendation engine, which I'm just going to copy right now. Let's go back to that catalog entity that's currently failing the campaign, a music player. Let's go to the source code for it. Now, if I look at the package JSON for the specific one, we can see we're still using this legacy music player recommendation engine. I'm going to go through and update this. Obviously, I've gone through and done a bunch more code changes before I release this, but in this sake of this demo, I'm just going to do this. Push it directly to our main branch. Now, if I look at this sound check, I can see I'm still failing this because it's running at whatever cadence I set it to run, but I'm just going to have it refresh itself manually. Now you can see I'm passing this campaign. I've gone through and done this migration. What's next? How do I actually go about rolling this out for the specific music player that I've done? What I'm going to do is utilize our plugin called Confidence Flags to do that. Confidence Flags, you'll be able to manage feature flags directly inside of Portal like you would the software catalog, deployments, and incidents. There's no more switching between services in order to do your feature flagging. Here you can see inside of Confidence, I've rolled out an AI recommendation engine flag, and I have the deployment set up to run for the US with 50% of the different users that are going to come through it. Confidence is built on open features, so if you're utilizing existing feature flagging tools, it's very easy to migrate over to something like Confidence in the future for you as well too. But how does my AI recommendation engine relate to my data platform? For that, I'm going to pass it over to Megan, who's going to talk about the data experience plugin that we've built directly for Portal.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. I'm Megan. I'm the product manager for the data experience. As we all know, data is foundational to every single development project. It powers critical features in our apps and allows us to create unified and unique user experiences. And with Portal's data experience, I can integrate with my data sources and catalog data sets directly within the software catalog. This provides a centralized view of my software and my data for all my Portal users to look at. This also enables data practitioners like data engineers and data analysts to self-serve their data use cases inside Portal. So I could do things like enforcing best practices and standards with Soundcheck and searching for the data I need for our new AI recommendation engine. So now I'm on the data overview dashboard, which you can see here, and we provide a couple different metrics. I can see a snapshot of my data ecosystem, where I can see the total number of data sets I have. I can also see the total number of DBT projects, and I can scroll down to see this over time. We break it down by source as well, so you can see if you have data spread across multiple data warehouses. Now, if I go to the Ingest tab, I can see the integrations that we support out of the box for our data experience plugin. We support Snowflake, Redshift, and BigQuery. We also have an integration for Data Build Tool, or DBT if you're familiar, which ingests DBT projects into the software catalog as components. We have an exclusion tab too on the right-hand side, which allows you to specify which data sets you don't want to surface in your portal. This means that data consumers like data analysts or data scientists who are searching for data do not have to see all your data sets, so like intermediate or staging tables, or perhaps data sets that are produced from our legacy recommendation service. Now I'm going to go to the AI recommendation engine page and look at its entity page. So what's super powerful with the data experience is that I can see this unified view in this relations card. I can see the AI engine consumes 3 example data sets. It consumes a music catalog data set, a user listen history data set, and a user preference embeddings data set. All tables that you think would be valuable to actually produce better recommendations. Now I'm going to click into the music catalog data set and go to the data experience tab to look at this information and self-serve my data context. At the very top, I could see quick actions, so I can open the data set if I have permission to do so. I can contact the owner if I have questions about this data set. But what's super valuable here is that you can see an about card that has a description for what the purpose of this data is. I could see its source location, which is BigQuery. I could see the location, some valuable tags that will help me and my data consumers when I'm searching for data, labels, when it was last ingested into the software catalog, and when it was last updated in its source. On the right-hand side, I can self-serve my understanding by looking at the table schema. I see a list of different fields like track, artist, album, its type, and description to help me understand what exactly is inside this data set. All self-serving without having to reach out to a data platform team or even the data owner. The last thing that I'll show is I'll go to the Soundcheck tab, and I can see that there's an active campaign running for this critical data set that is being consumed by our AI recommendation engine. We have a campaign right now that's running to ensure that this data set has a proper owner, is not owned by a random person like myself perhaps. So you can see here that we have a check that ensures that this data set has a team owner, which is super powerful, and I can trust that I can use this data set in our engine. This is just one example on how you can use the data experience in Portal and maximize the value of Portal and bring data practitioners inside your Portal. With that, I'll pass it over to Tom to wrap up our use case and recap everything we just discussed.
Thank you, team. And to sum up, this is how Spotify builds, but layering new capabilities on top of a strong IDP foundation to streamline the development processes. We've shown you how Spotify Portal supports everything from migrations of managing large-scale migrations to enhancing developer experience with AI, data management tools, and experimentation frameworks. With Portal, you already get our plugin bundle, which includes Soundcheck, RBAC, Skill Exchange, and Insights. In addition, all these new plugins we just demoed automatically comes with Portal 2. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. From integrations with IDEs, MCP, to automate all this flow with agents, Portal helps you to create a truly modern development environment, which enables you to move fast in this evolving space. Our product and engineering teams inside Spotify have already been using internal version of these plugins for years. And now we tested it in Portal through our design partner program, which you'll hear about it more in a minute. If you're interested in learning more about everything you saw here, just reach out to us by applying for the Portal beta, and we'll be happy to walk you through all the features. Speaking of design partners, I'm very excited to introduce Tang Nguyen, our head of sales, and Dave Bresci, the head of the developer experience at PagerDuty, for a conversation about PagerDuty journey as one of our Portal's design partner. Take it away, Tang.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tang Nguyen. I'm head of sales for Backstage, and I'm based out of New York. I'm here today with Dave Bresci of PagerDuty. I had the pleasure of working with Dave because PagerDuty did a very deep POC of Portal. So, Dave, can you take a moment to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Dave Bresci. I've been at PagerDuty about 7 years, starting managing the SRE team, then 2 SRE teams, and now our small but mighty developer experience team.
Cool. So Spotify has had a relationship with PagerDuty for many years, and we view them as a partner versus just a customer. And everyone knows PagerDuty, and we all know PagerDuty for incident management, but PagerDuty does so much more. Dave, can you go into all the cool things PagerDuty is up to these days?
Yeah, I feel like just talking about incident management is a little bit of a curse because I think that's what we're known for, but maybe we can start grounded with that. So we have so many more capabilities nowadays. So let's say an incident comes in, we're able to not only deduplicate it and group incidents, multiple incidents from multiple sources using our AI ops, but also guide you to similar incidents to help you triage them. We have automations that can actually run triggered automatically whenever you get a particular type of incident that will help you diagnose or even automatically remediate an incident. You can use PD Advance within your Slack bot or within MS Teams to actually interact and triage while the incident is occurring, or automatically creating status updates. You can use CSOps to create these status updates and post them automatically to your status page. And then once an incident is resolved, incident analysis, you can slurp in all your Slack data, automatically create an incident review, and then we take you from the beginning to all the way through to the end of the learnings of an incident. And so it's not magic, but it is PagerDuty today. And but with all that extra features that we've added into our platform the last few years, we've also dramatically increased our complexity.
That's valuable. Thank you, Dave. So let's transition a little bit and discuss your IDP journey. In 2021, PagerDuty started exploring Backstage. Dave, can you talk about how did you know you needed an IDP and what were your use cases? Can you kind of take us through that journey?
Well, it was very much a ground up initiative. So it started during a hack week. We had a pretty big sprawl and drift of services, and most people were creating them just by copy pasting a sort of skeleton repo. And so we'd see things kind of drift wildly. And one of our engineers, Mark Shaw, I want to give him credit, kind of brought in Backstage during a hack week, and we created our backend skeleton golden path through Backstage at the time. And it was just so wildly successful that we felt like we had to officially adopt it. So we brought in Scaffolder, we started bringing in tech docs and doing our developer documentation into Backstage, and had this sort of dream of a single pane of glass for all of our developers. We put our front end skeleton in there, and it was a huge success.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned a lot of keywords here, which pertains to sprawl, drift, context switching, and that's why you looked at an IDP. And these are undesirable descriptors in the world of platform engineering, and you're looking to solve that. So when we talk to companies today, all of these companies have similar problems. So I think they're happy to hear your use case here. So we fast forward to 2022. You have Backstage running. The engineers are using it regularly. Can you talk about the impact that Backstage had on your organization, and how did you measure that impact?
So the most immediate thing was we saw that our new service creation was 3 times faster, from a median of 75 hours to 25 hours to create a new service, both front end and back end. So that was hugely impactful. And it was especially impactful. We had a couple of acquisitions and we opened up a new office. So there's a couple of things we do. One is every developer now, because we have Backstage and we have sort of the golden path available, they all would create sample services right away, almost on day one. So they get a service out that they could play with using our tech stack within a day. The other part was because of these acquisitions, we had people who had to come in from another company and adopt our tech stack for their services. So now they could largely self-service. We had the Golden Pass, we had our developer docs in there, and they would just go in there, and we would barely have to shepherd them at all. A couple of the folks would reach out and say like, "Hey, we weren't expecting it to be this easy." And lastly, it was able to really facilitate our Kubernetes migration. We had all of our developed migration docs. We had the Kubernetes Golden Path. Everything was in Backstage, and the developers were able to, by and large, migrate to Kubernetes on their own, unless it was a particularly complicated service. And that really, really made a large impact and cut down the amount of effort that it took to undertake a large migration.
Got it. That's a great story. So we fast forward to 2024, and now you've been actively using Backstage for a couple of years. The engineers are being onboarded faster, services are created faster, software development and maturity is higher quality. So there's a lot of value that you're getting from Backstage. So all in all, like there's a modicum of stability and productivity. So with that in mind, we approach you with Portal in Q4 of 2024. And then Portal, as you know, everyone's saying, is our SaaS version of Backstage. When we started talking about SaaS, why were you open to listening, and what made you want to evaluate Portal when everything was seemingly going pretty smooth for you with Backstage?
Well, if I'm being honest, I would say we had stagnated. Like I mentioned, we have a small but mighty team. The dream of the single pane of glass was slipping away a little bit because we had just kind of kept those core services. We weren't really adding anything to Backstage at the time because we had wide range of responsibilities. Whenever we'd get to work on Backstage, it was more like to keep up with the maintenance. So I was always on the lookout for outsourcing that, for like finding some sort of SaaS version. And to be honest, when you came to me with that and you said, "Oh, also it includes all these premium plugins, plus you'll be able to test some of the early access to new features." I mean, to me that was an easier business case to make than even just saying like if I go to my boss and I say, "Hey, I want X amount of money to get the premium plugins for our on-prem Backstage," it doesn't actually help me. It just actually increases the maintenance burden that we have to have. But if I go to them and say like, for incrementally more, I got to outsource this and I get all the premium plugins on top of it, that was actually an easier business case for me to make. And it was almost a no-brainer. And we were pretty excited to work on this with you. And I think my goal now is just to be able to take more advantage of the features we find in Portal and bring them to our developers.
Yeah, that's a great story. So thanks for sharing that. And it just makes a lot of sense. Companies like yourselves, like you guys are lean, you guys are busy, and you really have to just focus on your core business. And Stephen Covey famously said, you have to let the main thing be the main thing. And PagerDuty just needs to be busy paging people at 2 a.m. So you don't necessarily want to be experts at IDP implementation and maintenance. So now Portal is implemented. It's launched and it's ready to go at PagerDuty. So also I want to give a shout out to the PagerDuty team, Tamim, Joe, Tristan, and Charlie. You guys did a phenomenal job during our proof of concept. But now that Portal is up and running and ready to go, what's your plan for enablement, adoption, and getting Portal really sticky at PagerDuty so you get that value as soon as possible?
Well, if we're giving kudos, I also want to give kudos to you and to Joe for being amazing partners during this journey. And you've made it easy for us to adopt. Initial plan is to be at least as least disruptive as possible, so more of a lift and shift. Like what I want to do is one day to just let our developers know, maybe even using the same URL, off you go using Portal. Now they'll automatically have access to a lot of things they didn't have access to before, like Soundcheck, and we've actually given early access to folks in our development Portal instance for teams like our security team, who's really interested in tracking their vulnerability management initiative using Soundcheck. Our front end team has been using it to track some critical dependencies. So we already have a few teams that have been exposed to these additional features in Portal, and we want to bring the rest of the organization along a little bit slowly, just to get them used to maybe the new look and feel, and then start exposing them to some of the additional features and plugins. And then we'll be doing probably a developer survey to see what they want. Like we listen to our developers, that's one of the key things, and see like, what would you like to see more of in our IDP? And the fact that we don't have to maintain it ourselves will actually give us more time to be able to build those features into the IDP that they want.
Cool. And as you work on enablement and adoption, the whole Spotify team is here to support you and aid you in that journey. So as we wrap up, like Portal is going to be a hugely valuable team that's apparent to the engineering team and all your developers. But how do you get your executives excited? How do you get the rest of the company excited about this platform engineering platform, basically? How do you tie it back to broader PagerDuty initiative so everyone is excited about the productivity gain here?
Well, at the local level, which is what, my team is a developer experience team, I think about actually ground this a lot, and I give DX credit for a couple of years ago that in one of their papers they had a triangle that shows the important things in developer experience, which are feedback loops, reducing cognitive load, and flow state. And I kind of try to ground myself in those. And I think that the move to Portal will actually help us facilitate a lot of that going into the future. I mean, it actually gives us more time to push for that single pane of glass. We'll be able to build more into Backstage, bring more features and developer productivity tools to our core developer customer base. We've already started building some custom plugins as well, that like a functional ownership registry that Joe, as you mentioned earlier, has been building along with Charlie. Other features like confidence flags look really interesting. And I got to be honest, I'm really particularly excited about AiKA. I mean, I know nowadays you have to mention AI like 17 times if you're in tech, otherwise you become a pariah. It's like the new Meow game. But AiKA actually solves a real use case that we've gotten feedback from developers directly in our developer surveys for years, which is documentation sprawl, documentation discoverability, and the ability to find answers quickly. We were actually looking for our own solution to this before we even knew that you were going to bring this potentially to Portal. So we're really excited to play with that because I think it could actually be a real difference maker for our developers.
Great. Dave, this has been amazing. The entire Spotify team is rooting for your success, and we're here to support you along that journey. So that's a wrap on this segment. Stefan, back over to you.
Thank you, Tang and Dave. And to wrap this up, I want to leave you with how are you getting started. I hope you are excited about Portal and trying it out. I'm taking what we're shipping, what we have inside Spotify, and shipping that together with maintaining the OSS framework we have with Backstage Donald, which is what we're using internally of Kate. We're taking those two things together and we're putting them in a SaaS solution. And I would like to call that basically Backstage in a box. So please head out and try Spotify Portal for Backstage. To do that, go over to backstage.spotify.com and sign up for Portal. And as you heard us speak about today, there's a design partner program. So do sign up to that one. It will give you access to Portal. It will include some guidance from Joe and others here in the services org. And you will be able to give feedback because we're still early enough that you want to give feedback and shape the future together. Also, again, thank you for Dave and PagerDuty to being design partners here. Thank you to Abi from DX who joined us today. And as you see at the bottom there, there's a link, Get Portal DX, which is a way to get the DX for free for 90 days. Hopefully this will help you understand your developers and get you started on the right foot. So to everybody who's here today, thank you and see you.